Minister, ladies and gentlemen, the title that I came up with was Cities, Small Changes and Big Effects. Because the power of a small change, taking away cars, changing a road, the insertion of a new building has powerful effects to bring a new civic dimension to our cities, change out of all proportion to the effect of the initiative. And I start really with this image of 1996, which is Horse Guards Parade, and which I remember walking past and thinking that this, which could be one of the most handsome spaces in Europe, was the largest outdoor car park in Europe. And I worked with the newspaper, the London newspaper, the Evening Standard, and the result of drawing attention to that kind of civic outrage, 1 year later, this was the transformation. At a larger scale, Trafalgar Square, and it's interesting, I've heard that if you want to look far into the future, first you look far back into the past. And if we take Trafalgar Square in 1900, before the introduction of the automobile, it was a very gracious space. But if we look a few years ago from that same direction, then the city has become out of balance, and arguably the heart of the nation, a noble space, is totally compromised into a traffic roundabout. And to make a small initiative usually requires a huge amount of work, out of all proportion, but the value is quite remarkable. And if we look at this same space towards the historic Hawksmoor Church, as it was before, and of course people's memories are very short and everybody's forgotten what it was like in the past. And one final image from the heart of Trafalgar Square, as it was before, and as it is now, as a setting for the historic buildings. But also, as the minister drew our attention to, that sense of identity. And this largely forgotten space has now become a kind of outdoor living room for the capital city, a place for celebrations. It's impossible to come here without talking about the Reichstag. It's such an important building in terms of my career and that of my colleagues. But just to take one aspect, the building in 1894 and this great ceremonial entrance and the way in which before Jean-Claude and Christo symbolically wrapped it, this is how it looked. And lots of people would go up those steps and they would come and they would find that it was all locked and bolted, and there'd be a little sign saying, go round the corner, and there'd be a tiny door and you'd enter. So part of our task was to go back in time and to rediscover that heroic dimension to the building and to create that sense of public space and identity. So that now has been brought alive, and of course is the access to the cupola and that public dimension. So a symbol related to history, the introduction of art. And coming to art, perhaps one of the best preserved temples, Roman temples, remaining in the world, the Maison Carrée, in the heart of a small town called Nîmes. A lot of similarities with Passau, similar density, and very neglected, very run down at the time that we entered this project. And if you looked from the portico outwards, past the sea of parked cars, you'd find this very run-down area. The point here is that a small change can have a ripple effect which goes way beyond the site. And the transformation of this project, you can see the tree on the right-hand side. It's the same tree now with the insertion of this small building, which is a cultural building. It's for the culture of the place, it's for visitors, it's for citizens. It attracts a huge audience now, but it's also for the children in the community. And the building is very large, it's quite deceptive. It goes down as much into the ground as it does above the ground. But it establishes a dialogue with the Roman temple, so at the top there, looking back, you connect with the temple. So it has the social dimension, and it is, again, about that sense of place, the sense of identity. It's a global building, but it is very, very local. And it's inspired by the terrace hill towns of the area, and is a social focus. And it's very much about relating with history, but again, creating a civic outdoor space. And I talk a lot about research. Some of it is subjective value judgments about what constitutes the important routes. Others, for example, Trafalgar Square was only possible by literally interviewing 27,000 motorists. So it's a bit like an iceberg. You change a small road, but the body of work below the ground that's necessary and important in terms of convincing community groups and those with special interests. This image is of a very depressed industrial area when the Industrial Revolution moved on. It's Gateshead in the northeast of England, historic bridge on the right. And more recently, culture has been used as a means to regenerate this area. So this building on the left, called the Sage, which is for the performing arts, that has played a major role in the transformation of this area and this city. And it's now become a tourist destination. And if you look at the shell of the roof, imagine that you lift that shell off. And there's a model that shows here. There is like a street that runs through it. It's an extension of the street within the building. And there's a music school to bring young people into the complex, and there are 3 performance spaces. One is a formal one, which is off this main route. This is the main route, the street, through the building. And then this serves as a backdrop, almost like a theater for local events, which bring the place to life at night. And then off here, there are 3 major performance spaces. There's the formal one for classical music, and then very much about a younger generation. There is here for popular music and jazz. So very much a social magnet. Taking up some of these themes of readjusting the balance between traffic and pedestrians, Marseille was suffering from the problem that its heart and its life started in the old port, but somehow the port got cut off and became choked by traffic. So this is a long-term project. We've done the first phase. The second phase will take another 10 years. But this is how it was before, and this is how it is now. So it's giving space back to pedestrians. It's bringing the life and the industry, interestingly, back to the port. And again, as it was before, another part of this area on the edge of the harbor, and here the space is being given over to restaurants and outdoor cafe life. And there's one small intervention, which is for a marketplace and events, and we just created a very delicate mirror-finished pavilion, which has become a kind of talking point, and it turns reality upside down and becomes a place for entertainers and is extraordinarily popular. In the same area, we have recently completed a project. And again, this is Monaco, and it's a harbor. And the harbor, rather neglected and cut off. And the idea of introducing a yacht club which would bring life back to the harbor. And the yacht club as a concept sounds quite private and exclusive, and in one sense it is, but only one part. This building, which has brought this harbour back to life is also educational. It has a museum, it has a school, it has a sailing school. So every young child who goes through the Monaco school system will be here to learn how to sail. The local rowing club is here. There are shops opening onto the port. It's over 7 levels. It has a different presence at night. It's connected by an internal staircase. The road is at a higher level. It's on the Grand Prix circuit. It has many different lives and aspects to it. This is the more private clubroom part of the building. But what I think the most unexpected consequence of this building is the reaction of the local community, because we are hearing now time and time again that just the introduction of this building has added a much larger dimension to the principality, to the city. It's enlarged the social life. It's given more opportunities. So in that sense, it is perhaps the ultimate thing of one small building making a contribution out of all proportion to that intervention. Thank you.
Distinguished hosts, distinguished guests, dear honoree, dear Norman, the duty and the privilege of a laudator is not to rival a work of encyclopedic reference and list the great achievements of the honoree or give meticulous account of his stations of life. For in the case of Norman Foster, Baron Foster of Thamesbank, this is unnecessary, for there is a vast literature of his life and his individual works. I believe it is one's duty and privilege to lift the genius, the uniqueness of a personality who has played and is still playing such an important role in the world of architecture, design, and the applied philosophy of ways of living, which makes him one of the most remarkable figures in these fields of our time. Norman Foster is truly a universalist, because in the worlds of architecture, design, concept of modern living, he left his mark in practically every corner of the earth. The Reichstag in Berlin, the Millau Viaduct in the south of France, the Buenos Aires City Hall, the library at the Californian State University, the International Airport in Beijing. Norman Foster is a great humanist in the classical tradition. Here on German soil, I would cite Ulrich von Hutten, but I would also quote Leon Battista Alberti and Donato Bramante. The German word Bauherr fits him so well. The recently so tragically young deceased Fritz Schirmacher was one of his admirers and said to me only recently, "Every time I look at the Reichstag, I think of the cupola of St. Peter, and although I'm an agnostic, I pray." Of humble origin in his native Manchester, Norman Foster rose through his own exertions, the hard way. He has retained a burning compassion for the underprivileged and for improving standards of living as well as standards of taste. His insatiable curiosity for comprehending worldwide problems, his outreach as a social thinker as well as a groundbreaking visual artist, designers, architects, town planners, and his zest have never left him with advancing age. He seems to possess the elixir of eternal youth. The soon-to-become octogenarian is a passionate sportsman, takes part in renowned bicycle races, ski competitions. Sustaining and inspiring him, Norman has at his side his brilliant wife, Elena Ochoa, herself an amalgam of artistic and academic experience and an unquenchable enthusiasm. Her Ivory Press in Madrid is one of the leading publishing houses of contemporary art, architecture, and photography, and she shares with Norman the art and the passion for enlightened conviviality. Norman Foster and Foster of Partners can be expected to break new grounds in many new countries, many continents. They are truly an international powerhouse. The ever-youthful, dynamic, mutely optimistic leader can be relied upon to bring humanity more imaginative offerings of his tremendously creative genius. Ladies and gentlemen, Passau, at the crossroad of several historical traditions and aspects of civilization, believes wholeheartedly in its ascendancy at the center of learning and creative arts. It's a city and a community that looks forwards and looks towards with greater self-confidence to the future. The city of Passau and its university, many of its institutions, government and civil, may now honor Norman Foster today with the Mention Europa Arts Award and express our gratitude to him for his life's work, which carved in stone and metal will bear witness to his immortality.
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, zur Verleihung des MEE Awards kommt nun unsere Verlegerin Angelika Diekmann auf die Bühne.